If things don't work out with her, I still have options.
I don't think he ever expected me to see those messages. I found the messages completely by accident. Ethan had left his phone on the kitchen counter while he was in the shower. And honestly, I wasn't even trying to snoop. I was just looking for the food delivery notification because we had ordered dinner together. But then, a message popped up on his screen from one of his friends. Bro, what are you gonna do if she finds out about the other girl? For a second, I genuinely thought maybe I misunderstood it. My stomach dropped instantly, and before I could stop myself, I opened the conversation. What I saw that night changed the way I looked at our entire relationship. There were months of messages, jokes about me, screenshots of our arguments, private conversations that should have never left our relationship, and buried between all of it was the message that hurt the most. If things don't work out with her, I still have options. I stared at the screen for what felt like hours, because suddenly, every insecurity I ever ignored started making sense. The late replies, the emotional distance, the way he never fully committed to talking about our future. For almost 2 years, I thought I was building a serious relationship with someone who loved me. Meanwhile, he had been treating me like a backup plan the entire time. Then I found another message, one from only a few days earlier. His friend asked, So, who do you actually want? And Ethan replied with a laughing emoji before typing, Not her. I didn't confront Ethan that night. I didn't scream, didn't cry, didn't throw his phone across the room like people probably expected me to. I just quietly locked his screen and placed it exactly where I found it. Then I sat there alone in the kitchen, trying to process the fact that the person I loved had been discussing me like I was temporary. A few minutes later, Ethan walked out of the shower smiling like everything was normal, and somehow, that made it worse. Because while my entire world was collapsing in my head, he was completely relaxed. He kissed my forehead, asked if the food had arrived, then sat next to me on the couch like nothing had happened. And for the first time in our relationship, I looked at him differently, not as the guy I loved, but as someone I never truly knew. The next few days felt strange. I started noticing things I had ignored for months. How protective he was over his phone. How he always avoided serious conversations about the future. How every argument somehow became my fault. And slowly, I realized something painful. Ethan liked having me, but he was always waiting to see if something better would come along. That realization destroyed me more than the messages themselves, because I had spent 2 years treating someone like my future, while he treated me like an option. And honestly, once you realize you're someone's backup plan, you can never feel safe with them again. Over the next few weeks, something inside me completely changed. I stopped asking Ethan where he was, stopped checking whether he'd texted me goodnight, stopped trying to fix every little problem in our relationship. And strangely, he barely noticed. That was the part that hurt the most. Because after everything I discovered, our relationship still continued exactly the same. Like I was just expected to stay no matter how badly he treated me. But mentally, I had already started leaving him. I started spending more time alone, going on long drives at night, listening to music instead of waiting for his calls. And slowly, I began remembering who I was before I built my entire life around someone else choosing me. Then one night, Ethan casually looked at me and asked, "Why have you been acting so distant lately?" I almost laughed hearing that, because the moment I finally stopped begging for reassurance, He suddenly noticed the difference, but by then, it was already too late. A few days later, I quietly started apartment hunting without telling him. And honestly, for the first time in months, I felt peaceful. Not because I stopped loving him, but because I stopped trying to convince someone to value me. Then one evening, while Ethan was asleep beside me, I looked over at him and realized something that completely changed everything. I wasn't scared of losing him anymore. I was scared of staying. The night I left Ethan, he thought I was just spending the weekend with a friend. That's what I told him. And honestly, watching him believe it so easily hurt more than I expected. Because after 2 years together, he still didn't notice how emotionally exhausted I had become. While he was at work that Friday, I packed my apartment in silence. Clothes, books, photos, every little piece of a relationship I once thought would last forever. And by the time he came back that evening, I was already gone. At first, he thought I was overreacting. His text sounded almost annoyed. "Can we not do this right now? You're being dramatic. We can talk when you calm down." But once I stopped replying, his tone completely changed. The calls became constant. Then the apologies started. Then the panic. A week later, Ethan showed up outside my new apartment unannounced. And honestly, he looked terrified. Not because he suddenly loved me differently, but because for the first time, he realized he no longer had access to me. He kept saying the same thing over and over. "I made a mistake. I didn't mean it. I still want you." But standing there listening to him beg, I realized something strange. The girl who would have done anything to keep him was already gone. Because somewhere between the lies, the waiting, and the humiliation, I finally understood my own worth. And once that happened, Ethan stopped feeling like the love of my life. He became a lesson, one I would never repeat again.